Welcome back to our tutorial on how to code the Among Us minigame using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. In the first part, we created the basic structure of the game using HTML. Now in the second part, we'll be focusing on the CSS to make our game look more polished and visually appealing. And in this part of the tutorial, we'll be using CSS to add colors, borders and animations to our game board, making it look more like the real thing. We'll cover the basics of CSS including selectors, properties, values, and show you how to apply these concepts to your code. By the end of this part, you'll have a much better understanding of how CSS works for this particular web game and how to use it to create beautiful designs for your own projects. So let's dive in and start coding our Among Us minigame using CSS. So in the last part, we left at HTML. Our game looked somewhat like this. In this part, we'll be taking over CSS and make it look like this. So first, start off by creating a new folder in our directory called static, inside of which we have blank folders, CSS, images and JavaScript. In the images folder, we will add an image for the asteroid background called up. Let's create our CSS file style.css and we will link it in our HTML. Static CSS style.css. Okay, let's start off by styling the body. We'll give it a margin of 0 and it's important. We'll give a background color of 222. So it's a dark gray background. Yes. Then we style the container div, which is the main div inside of which we have the entire game. So container, we give it a height of 100 VH and we set overflow to hidden. For those of you who don't know VH is a dynamic property unlike pixels, which is a fixed amount. So if you had given 100 pixels, it would have been fixed at 100 pixels, but 100 VH adjusts according to the screen size which you're having. So for a 720p display, the maximum height will be 720, the maximum height supported by the screen. For 4K, it will be the maximum height supported by the screen also, if that makes sense. Then we style the task div, give it a position of absolute. We set the top 50% and left 50%. We'll have height as max content, so the maximum which will be supported by the content inside of it. And finally we have transform, translate it by minus 50% and 50%. So what it did is It gave it 50% and then reverted it to minus 50%. So it is where it should be. Right, next up we have the div with class nav. We give it a padding of 5 pixels and 10 pixels. Display as flex. So this is the buttons which we have, and we will also give a flex wrap as wrap. Then we have the nav button class. First of all, the background color, we don't want any background color, so we will set it as transparent. So background color transparent. We will give it a border of 3 pixels, solid white. So border 3 pixels, solid, and hashtag 000 or FFF. It's only FFF. Yep. Then we give a border radius of 8 pixels. Color of the button as white. Font size as 16 pixels. Let's just check it how it is. We also want to give the cursor style of pointer when we hover over these buttons, so we'll do that. So cursor pointer, let's check it now. Yes, so as you can see, the cursor, it changes to pointer when we hover over these buttons. Let's just also give it a padding to make it look cleaner. So we'll give it a padding of 3 pixels and 5 pixels. Much better now. We will give outline none. And we'll also give it important. Yes. And we'll finish it off by a margin of 0 and 5 pixels on both sides. Yes, works pretty good. Then we stylize nav button active. We give it a background color of RGBA 255, 255, 255 and alpha of 0.4. Now we will set universal overflow hidden. So we call an overflow hidden and set its overflow as hidden. Let's check it up till now. Yes, seems good. Then we start off with our wires. giving it a width of 500 pixels and a height of 460 pixels. We set the background color as hashtag 212025. We give it display flex and position of relative, so it will relatively flex it. Here's the preview of it. So since this preview won't be that clear, I'll show it to you in the final game. So this is what the code does. Hold on. Yes. So it gives this background color and a display of flex. We have given it a height of 500 pixels, width of 460 pixels. This background color, this is the background color, and a display of flex for all these files. Now we will give it the gradient and all the other stuff. So we define a pseudo property for wire. So wires before we give it a content or we have display block. We give position as absolute. We give top 0 and left 0. We have width 30 pixels of width and height of 460 pixels. And finally a background color of hash 383341. Alright. So there's been a mistake here. This was for wires left, and now we will be doing for wires before the pseudo property. Again, we will start off by content empty, display block, position absolute. Now we will give it a background of linear gradient. So linear gradient 90 degrees. We'll give in the color RGBA 0, 0, 0 and alpha of 0.8. Transparent, and finally the other color as 0, 0, 0 and alpha 0.8. We will also give in the height and width as 100%. So height 100% and width of 100%. Right, so this is what we have done until now. Now we'll be doing wires left, wires right, I mean. We'll give it content narrative, display block position absolute, top 0 and right 0. Then we will give it a width of 30 pixels and a height of 460 pixels. And a background color of so this is what it did. Now we will modify the wire itself. So we call in wire, give it a height of 20 pixels and a padding of 40 pixels. Hey, 40 pixels to the top bottom and 0 to the sides. Now we will give color to each of the transparent wire SVGs as I told in while we were doing HTML. So in wire red, we can wire color as red. Then we have wire yellow, we give wire color as we have wire purple and wire blue. Right, now we will make the wire connectors, which will be the boxes which light up when the correct wires are connected. So we give in wire connector and define a pseudo property before. No, we'll do the wire connector before the pseudo. So we give it a width of 40 pixels. Yeah. Let's do the aligning first. Yes. The background color has a variable and we'll give it wire color. A height of 12 pixels should be good enough and a Z index of 1. We'll give position relative to the wire and we will define the border of 4 pixels solid and black with an alpha of 0.3. And then we'll also do the border radius as 4 pixel solid and the same color we did earlier. So this is the wire connector thing, the raw wire part, the copper part of the wire. And now we'll do wire connector after. So dot wire connector before, we'll give content as empty, width of 10 pixels and a height of 16 pixels. We'll give it a background color of P and 5 P4. Position absolute to the wires and a Z index of -1. Let's also do wire connector after. Content empty, display block, position absolute. We give it a top of -24 pixels and a width of 30 pixels. We will also give it a background color of gray shade. Then we do a border top of 2 pixels solid black. And a border at the bottom of it. So border bottom 2 pixels solid black. And let's see until now. Alright, so this is the wire connectors on the left part and this is the wire connectors on the right part, which will glow up when we connect the correct wires. Alright, now we will make the wire connectors. So wire connectors left before, we will have right as -10 pixels, top as -2 pixels, and then we will set the border top and border bottom radius. So the border top right radius is 8 pixels and border bottom right radius. So border bottom right radius also has 8 pixels. And then to its after property, we set wire connector left after, and we will give it a background color of yellow. So background color of and left of 0. We'll do the same thing for right. So wire connector right, we'll set its after as right equals to 0. Then we call in the classes wire connect and wire connector right. And we will also give it a background color of this yellow shade.
Jim says he does. This afternoon when we were over by their house.
Yes, and this is how it turns out. The left wire connectors have been filled with yellow color. And okay, we'll still have to do the wires. Now we will style the wires back. So wires back, we give a display of flex and flex direction as column, width of 40 pixels, and a padding top of 30 pixels. So top padding has 30 pixels. We will also have to do the wires back right. Yes. Now we set wires back right. We will have to do margin auto. So margin left auto will give us our right wires aligned correctly. Now we will set up the wire connectors on the right before and after. Only before. So we have wire connector right, and we call in its before. We give it a left of negative 10 pixels. We give it a top of minus 2 pixels. And the border top left radius 8 pixels and border bottom left radius as 8 pixels. So border bottom left radius also has 8 pixels, and we will see how it looks. Seems to do the trick. Now we will have the wire body. We'll give it a position of absolute and top and left as 0. So top as 0 and left as 0. Z index of -1. And then we'll give width and its height. So width we'll set it as 500 pixels and height of 460 pixels. Yes, seems to be working. So the wire body won't be visible until we do its JavaScript part. Then we have the active wire, which is being dragged by the mouse cursor, and we call in wire body, and we set its Z index as 1000. So the current wire which is being dragged should obviously have the maximum Z index, so it is on top of other elements. Yes, seems to be working now. Okay. Then we'll call in the active wire and the wire connector on left before property of the wire connector on left. So we have the active wire and wire connector on the left before, and we give it a content of none. We then set it the wire set and wire body, and we give all pointer events to none. And a Z index of 1000. So when the active wire is being dragged, we want no pointer events. Also, we want no pointer events when the wire is successfully connected to the right side. We then call in wire set and wire connector before, and we also give it a content of none. Now we will do the task refresh buttons. We now call in the task refresh button. We give it a height of 30 pixels. So we give it a height of 30 pixels, a border radius of 5 pixels, Then we give it a padding of 5 pixels and 20 pixels, margin of 10 pixels on the top and bottom, and auto margin for the sides. We have its display block and no border for it, so we'll give it border as none. Set it as an important property. Define the background color as and set the outline as none. This is also an important property. And finally, a cursor of pointer. The task refresh button will mostly be hidden using JavaScript. Then we call in when the task refresh button is active. There is only one selector. Yes. We want its background color to be changed to AAA. Now we will set in the modal. The modal is the thing which will show the task completed successfully pop up. So we call in modal class, and its position will be set to fixed, a top of 150, a top of 150 VH, and left of 50%. We will set the width as max content, so whatever the maximum width the content inside it can occupy. We'll do same for the height, so max content, and we will give it a z index of then we give it a transform translate of -50%, -50%. And then we will set animation of modal height as 0.15 second. The type of animation should be ease 1. And then we want to call modal show. So when we want to show the modal, we want its top to be set as 50%, and the animation modal show should be 0.15 second is the same thing which we did earlier. So now let's make the animation of modal show. So we call in keyframes and modal show. We'll set 0% as top 100 VH. And when it is 100 pixels, we want it as -50 VH. We want it as 50% for modal show, and now we will create animations for modal hide. At 0% of the animation, we want its top to be 50%. So initially it will start as top 50%, and when it will reach 100%, the top will be minus 50%. Then we call in modal alert and set its color to be white. A font size of 30 pixels. And font family as Nunito. As Nunito or sans serif when that is not available. We will also give a text shadow. As -3 pixels, 0 and black. So this is for the top. For the right shadow, we want 0, 3 pixels, color black. For the bottom, we want 3 pixels, 0 black. And for the left, we want 0, -3 pixels and black. We then stylize the hidden class as display none. Alright, now we will start off with styling the shooting task. So now we'll be starting off with stylizing the shooting asteroids task, and for that I'll suggest you to not pay attention to these squares and just focus on what's being changed when we style it. So we start off with calling the class shooting and setting its height and width as 500 pixels both. We give it a position of relative, and we want no cursor to be shown in there, so we set cursor to none. Now we will set the back part of the background of the shooting area, so we call in shooting back, and we set its width and height as 500 pixels. Also the height as 500 pixels, and we want background image as URL. We will set it to inside of static images. We have asteroid_bg.png. Let's check it. Inside of static images we have asteroid_bg.png. Yes, that's the correct path. And its background size we will give it as cover. So background size cover, and then we will add an animation to the background so it will blink accordingly. We'll create the animation just now. So animation shooting with an opacity 2 seconds. We will case it to infinite. Ease animation, and we want it to run infinitely. Let's make the animation for shooting opacity. We want it to be a blinking animation, so we will set 3 time frames for this. One at 0%, and second at 50%, and the third one at 100%. So at 0 we want its opacity as 0.7. At 50% we want the opacity to be 0.5, and again at 100% we want the opacity to be 0.7. Now we will set the border for the shooting area. So we call in shooting border. A position of absolute is given to it. Then for the width, we will want it to be calculated. So it will be 100% plus 12 pixels. So 100% of the shooting area, and we will add 12 pixels to it. So we will add calc 100%, and we will add 12 pixels to it. We will do the same thing for the height. We will set the top as -10 pixels, left as -10 pixels. We will set the border as 4 pixels, solid, and we will give a color of dark green color, and we want pointer events to be null. So let's check it out. Now we will call in the class shooting border angle. It will be the top brackets kind of thing above the border, so you'll see it. We'll set the position as absolute. We will give a top of -30 pixels and left of -30 pixels. We will give a height. Again, the height and width need to be calculated. This time we will add 60 pixels to 100%. So we will give in calculate 100% plus 60 pixels. We will do same for the width. And now we will set the top and left to 50%. So top 50% and left 50%. Now we want to add a transform property. So transform, we will translate it as -50% and -50%. And finally pointer events null. Let's check the preview. Alright, so now we have the shooting cursor over here, and we have this square brackets kind of thing, as I told you. Now we will add shooting cursor. So we'll make our cursor position, we will want it to be fixed. We'll give it a height and width of 80 pixels. And we will set top and left to 50%. We'll set transform translate to -50%, -50%. And pointer events none. We will finally add in the shooting cursor rails. We will give it a position of absolute, a top of 0 and a left of 0. Then we set the height and width to 100 pixels. Let's make it percentage. Yes. And pointer events again to none. Let's check the preview. So now the mouse and the cursor rails are moving perfectly, and the shooting area is also styled correctly. Now when we tap in the shooting area, there seems to be no explosion animation. So we will add that explosion animation first. So we'll start off by calling the shooting explosion div. And we set explosion rotation to 0 degree. We define its position to be absolute, top of 50% and left of 50%. Then we add a transform translate to -50%, -50%, and we wanted to rotate it at the variable of explosion rotation. We'll then give it a width of 80 pixels, height of 80 pixels. And we will call in an animation explosion for 1.5 seconds. Animation type ease, and we want it to run once. So what it does is that it calls into the transform property and translates it to -50%, -50%, and rotates it to the variable angle of explosion rotation. So when this value changes, it dynamically changes itself here. Hope that makes sense. Now we will make the explosion animation. So we add keyframes and explosion. We will define it at 3 time percentages, so at 0%, at 40%, and at 100%. So at 0%, we want to transform it. We will first transfer it to -50%, -50%, and we will scale it to 0.5, and the rotation on the variable explosion rotation. For 40%, it's the same, except the scale is set to 1, and at 100%, it's the same as 0%. The scale is reverted back to 0.5. Let's check if it works. The shooting animation will be visible once we are done with the JavaScript. We will finally add up to shooting battlefield. So we call in shooting battlefield. We set its position to absolute, and the top and left to 0. So top to 0 and left to 0. Now we have defined the height and width for the previous elements, but the main shooting battlefield area is not defined. So this is the area where the main action will be happening, where the asteroids will come floating in and where you will be able to shoot. You will be able to shoot within the shooting battlefield premises. So we set its height and width to 100%. And we want to know overflow to it, so we want it restricted to this portion of the shooting battlefield. So we'll set overflow hidden. Now we will add in shooting asteroid. We set its position to absolute, top to 50%, and left to 700 pixels and left to 700 pixels. We then want to transform the shooting asteroid to -50%, -50%. So transform, we will translate it to -50%, -50%. We will give it a padding of 20 pixels. And the height and width is still undefined for asteroids, so we will set it to 80 pixels and height to 80 pixels. Once we are done with the shooting asteroid, we now need to do something about the asteroid wreckage. So the events which will be occurring when we click on the asteroid and the asteroid is destroyed, we will define those. So first let's call in asteroid shooting, asteroid wreckage. We set its position to absolute. We set its top to 50% and left to 700%. Left to 700 pixels. Transform, translate to -50%, -50%, and the height and width will be 100 pixels. So hereby we are done with the asteroids task. Let's see it working. So the asteroids will be then I'll teach how to float in the asteroids in the JavaScript part, but for now just see that the shooting animation works when we tap when we click inside of the battlefield area. This is the shooting animation, and when we click on the asteroid it wrecks apart. So here it is, and the counter also updates itself. So destroyed 7. Alright, so now we will be moving on to the manifolds task. We call in manifolds div and we give it a border of 4 pixels, solid black, and let's check it now. So this is what we currently have inside of manifolds. These buttons will be through JavaScript, so ignore these for time being and just focus on the styling of it. Yes. So now we will first make the back area of the manifolds. So we call in manifolds back and we set its background color to be a shade of blue. So here it is. Not exactly blue, it's kind of grayish. But then we call in border 7 pixels, solid, and color 4 to 4 to 4 to purplish, brownish color. And then we also add a padding of 20 pixels. to gap it apart a little bit so things aren't that congested. Let's check it out now. Okay, seems good. We want the buttons inside of this area. So now we call in manifolds panel wrapper. And we give it a border of 5 pixels and brown color. So border of 5 pixel, solid. Now we will design the background of manifolds to give it a look of blue glass with some reflections on it. So we call in manifolds panel, display to flex, enable flex wrap, we want the background color to be this one. We give it a width of 450 pixels and a border of 1 pixel on the outset of it to give it kind of a 3D look. So border of 1 pixel, outset it and give this color and set its position to relative. Let's check how it turns out. Alright, looking good till now. Ignore these buttons, these won't be here until you do the JavaScript. Right now I have kept the JavaScript to help you visualize it better. Now we will create the reflection on the blue area. So we call in manifolds veil. And we give it a position of absolute. So right now the position of veil is below that of this manifolds panel, so we want it on top of that. So we set the Z index to be 10 and we want no pointer events in it, so pointer events none. Now we also want to give it a background image to make the background color and to make the reflection stand out. So we will give it the color of this. We want the top 0 and left 0. And height and width of 100%. Let's check it now. Yes, seems good. The reflection is now popping out. The reflection is now visible. We now want to stylize the manifolds button so they are not in a single row. but rather they are in 2 rows. So we call in the class of manifolds button, and we set its width to 80 pixels, height of 80 pixels. Give it a background image, background color of a shade of white, and we want the font size to be 40 pixels. The color inside of the buttons to be black, no border to it, no outline too, and set it as an important property. Also give it a margin of 5 pixels. Perfect. It seems good. Now we want the green animation when the button is active. So we call in manifolds button active, and we give it a background color of so when you click on the button it turns green. Now when the button is clicked in the wrong order, we want it to blink red. So we will do that. We will call manifolds panel wrong class, these class will be more defined through JavaScript, so don't worry about it. And we call in manifolds button. We give it an animation of wrong button. We want it to run for 5 seconds. And here we want the animation type to be in steps. So we want it to be in steps of 1. And we want it to run once. So now we will define that animation wrong button. If we call in at 0%, we want the background color to be red. Then at 30%, we want the background color to be white again. And again at 60%, we want it to turn red again. Let's check it now. Alright, seems to work. So 1, 2, 3. Now let's check it wrong. So we click 5 and it works perfectly. So thereby we have completed manifolds task, and now the last task which is left is the distributors task. So let's get on to it. Let's start off by calling the distributor class, and we give it a display of flex. And we give it a counter reset as a section. So counter reset as a section, and this is what it looks like. Ignore the rotations and all, that's all a part of JavaScript. Just focus on styling for now. We will start off by styling the left panel. So distributor, left panel, we will set its width to 300 pixels and height to 500 pixels. We want its background color to be we will give it a border of 4 pixels, solid black, and a position of relative. Let's see how it looks. Hope it seems good. Doing the left panel once again. So we call in the class of distributor left panel back, and we give it a position of absolute. We give it a width of 100% and a height of 100%. After doing this, you should have something which looks like this. So the back is now well established. Now we will call in the distributor right panel, and then we will work on distributor right panel back. So we call in the class distributor right panel. We will give it a width of 200 pixels. We'll give it a height of 500 pixels, a background color of gray. We'll give it a border of 4 pixels, solid black, and then we give it a position of relative. We'll give it a margin left of 10 pixels. Then we call in distributor right panel back class, and we give it a position of absolute. We give it a height of 100%. We give it a width of 100% and a height of 100% as well. After doing which, you should have something that looks like this. Right, now it's time to work on the class distributor block. So the main distributor block which we had, we give it a margin top of 40 pixels and a position of relative. And a position of relative, and then we would give it a position of relative. Next up, okay, let's see what it looks like. right now. So it looks something like this. No, wait. Yep, so far so good. Now what we want to do is that we want to call in distributor block plus the same class, and then we will give it a combined margin of 0 pixels on the top. So this is what it would look like. We call in distributor block plus distributor block, and combined we give margin top of 0 pixels, and then we will call distributor left panel and the main distributor block, and we'll give it a margin of 50 pixels from the left, so margin left 50 pixels. And the final preview should look something like this. So now we want to call in distributor left panel and distributor block, and this time we will give it a pseudo property of after, and then we will give it a content of counter, and the identifier which we will give in the counter will be section. And now we want it to be incremented, so we give in counter increment, which will manipulate the values of the existing counter, which is section in this case. And then we want a position of absolute. Top we will give it as 56 pixels and left as 54 pixels. After doing this, we want to transform translated by -50%, -50%. At the end of which we should have something which looks like this. Alright, so now the problem over here is that the 1, 2, 3 which will come here, of which only one is visible right now, we want it to be of a different font color, of a different font family, I mean. So for that, let's call in font family, and the font which we want to use is Caveat. So Caveat and cursive. And let's just increase the font size as well. So font size as 80 pixels. And we should have something like this. Seems fine. So now we will color the distributor circle with the color which is going to be here. So the first circle will be yellow, next will be blue, and the third one will be teal. The alignment of the circle and the elements will come as you do it step by step, so one brick at a time. We call in the class distributor circle and we assign it a width of 225 pixels plus a height of 142 pixels. Now we will give it, for the color we will give the SVG property, which is distar dist wire color, and we give it a property of black, and we give it a color of black. So we should be having something which looks like this. Now all that's left is for us to call in the color classes and color them. So we will call in distributor block yellow, and we will give it these two colors. Let's just preview it. So we should have something like this. Now we will do the same thing for blue and teal as well. So as I was saying, we will do the same things for blue and teal colors. I'll just copy them. They are just the same thing, the only difference is the color in it. Alright, so now we call in distributor block set and the circle. So distributor block set and distributor circle. And we will give it a dist wire color of yellow. We call in distributor right panel and the block. So distributor right panel and distributor block, and we will give it a padding of 30 pixels from the top, 0 from the right, and 38 pixels from the bottom. And we should have something which looks like this. Now we need to create progress bars over here, the 3 progress bars. So let's start working on that. We will call in distributor progress class, give it a border of 3 pixel solid gray. We'll give it a width of 135 pixels, a height of 30 pixels, followed by border radius of 4 pixels. And we'll also give it a background color of black for now. We will change it later on. And we give it a margin of 0 from top, 0 from right, 12 pixels from bottom, and 30 pixels from the right. Finally, we assign display type to be flex. And this is what we should have. So now we want the colors to flicker inside of here. So we'll do that by calling distributor progress and giving it a pseudo variable after. So we call in distributor progress, give it a pseudo variable of after. We'll assign it the content of this, height of 100%. Background color will be variable depending on which circle it is next to. So the variable which we will give is dist progress. We'll give it a width of 4 pixels and display type as block, and we will then we will assign an animation dist flickering for a duration of 0.5 seconds, which will be executed in steps of 2 for infinite duration. So let's start off by making keyframes and name it dist flickering. I'll just copy the animation to save some time. Alright, so what's happening here is, depending on the time percentage, we are assigning the progress bars, the color of the progress bars width to be of a variable progress diff, and we are using math function calculate to add certain number of pixels at different time percentages, so it would give a flickering animation which would practically look like this. But right now, as you can see, all of these 3 colors are flickering at the same time, so we will want to give it an animation delay of something like 0.15 or 0.25 seconds, which will give it a neat look like this. So now, as you can see, these are flickering differently. So for this, what you have to do is you have to call in distributor block, and assign the nth child variable to 2, and then you call distributor progress pseudo element after, and you give it an animation delay of 0.15 seconds. You do the same thing for the third child, except the animation delay will be 0.35 seconds. So now you should have something like this. So now here we want to call in the class distributor block set. So we call distributor block set and distributor progress before. And then we will assign content a height of 100 pixels, 100%. Give it a variable background color. So variable, and the variable will be dist progress. We'll give it a width of 94%, and display type shall be block. This is what you will end up with. So when the thumb comes to this position, the inside of this and the progress bar will be changed to yellow color. So now we will require a button which we will click, and the thumb will stop right here and move on to the next circle. So we will create that button right now. we will call in the class distributor btn and give it a background color of ACACAC. Give it a width of 100 pixels and a height of 30 pixels. We give it a margin of 0 on the top and bottom, and for right and left we give auto. We set its position to be relative with respect to others, and its display type shall be block. Now that wasn't racist. We give it a border of 3 pixels, solid black. To give it a 3D look, we will call in the box shadow, top 0, right 8 pixels, bottom 3 pixels, and left shall be negative 3 pixels. And we will give the shadow color to be black with alpha of 0.6. Finally, we give it an outline of none, make it important, and we assign the cursor to switch to pointer when we hover over the button. So this is what you should end up with. It seems good. Now we need to add the distributor button with the before pseudo property. So we'll call in distributor button with before, assign it content, give it a position of absolute, give it a width of 82 pixels and a height of 12 pixels. We give it top and left of 0. We give it a border of 6 pixels, solid. Now don't give the border color right here because we want different colors for different directions of the border. So border top and border bottom will be of the same color, and border left and right will be of same color. So I'll show it to you. Border top color will be the same color will be border bottom. Now we do the same thing for right and left. So border right color and the same color for left. After doing this, you should end up with something that looks like this. Right, so far so good. Now after we are done with clicking one button, we want the button to be disabled, so we no longer want the cursor effect over the used buttons. So for that we will call in distributor button, and inside of brackets we will give it disabled without the colons, and we set the cursor to default. Now we will style the distributor thumb, so call in that, give it a position of absolute with respect to the circle, give it a top and left of 0, give it a width of 122 pixels and a height of 132 pixels, and we want to translate it, so translate by 0 and -5 pixels. We also want to rotate it by -150 degrees. After doing which, you should have something like this. Now the final thing which we are going to do is the wires. After doing wires, everything will be positioned correctly. So let's call in the class of distributor wires. We will give it a position of absolute. We'll give it a width of 260 pixels and a top and left of 0. After doing which, you should have this. Alright, seems dope. Now, so as of now we are completed with stylizing all the tasks, and now all that's left for us is to do the map. So without the map done, we would have something which looks like this, and we will work on the map now. So we will call in the class of map, give it a position of absolute, set the top to 50%, left to 50%. We will translate it by -50%, -50%. We'll give it a height of max content, whatever it can fit. So since we don't want it to be in blocks, we will give it a display flex. So call in display and flex it. Right, seems good. So for the background, we actually have a gradient. I'll copy the gradient for now. It is something like this. So 3 things to note. The background size isn't defined, so we will have to define the size. And the background is repeating itself. So the background is not repeating itself, which we will need to fix by giving a background repeat, which we will need to fix by repeating it, and the overflow in the X direction should be hidden as well. So first we will assign background size as 40 pixels, overflow X as hidden, and we will repeat the background. So we should have something like this. Now you might be wondering, why is the task and background looking like this? It is looking like this because we still haven't styled the task of map task, after doing which we will have a good map, a good looking map. So we call in the class of map task, we assign the width to be 200 pixels and its height to be 250 pixels, and boom, the map is perfect now. So first we will add a yellow border around the tasks which are yet to complete. So we call in map task, and we will give a marker color. So first we'll give it a marker color of yellow, and after the task has been completed we want the yellow color to disappear. So this is what it would look like, these yellow borders. Now we need to work on the character's position and all. So we call in map char. We give it a position of absolute with respect to map, height of 70 pixels, width of 60 pixels, and we want its transition to be smooth. So transition, we want to transform it in 2.2 seconds in a linear motion. Then there will be a certain section on the map where the character should get small in order to accommodate with the map. So we give map char small, and we will transform it. We will scale it down to 0.8. So we scale it to 0.8. And then after this much is done, we need to add the glow to manifolds. So we will do that. We will call in the class of manifolds shining, and we will give it an animation. Name manifold shining for 2.5 seconds with ease, and we want it to run for infinite duration. And now I will copy the animation. So at certain time percentages you want it to fill. The problem right now is that we want an animation delay. So we will call in three classes which are animation delay 500, 1000 and 1500, and we will set the following animation delays as 0.5 second, 1 seconds and 1.5 seconds respectively. Now we also have an animation for the shining lines in the manifold section, which I'm not going to explain. You can just have a look at it. It's basically just this. So we call in the stroke dash array property of the SVG and dash offset, and then we manipulate the dash offset by adding an animation. So at times the offset is set to 0, minus 60, minus 60, minus 60. Now after we are done with all of this, the only thing left for us in CSS is this progress bar. So we will get started with the progress bar. We call in the class progress, set its position to relative, width of 410 pixels and a height of 60 pixels. After we have done this, we call in the SVG present inside of the div with the class progress. So progress and the SVG inside it. We give it the same width and height. And then when the progress is completed, we want again its position to be absolute, top of 19 pixels and left of 19 pixels as well. The background color we want to fill it with is green, so it is actually this color. And then we will create a transition for the width property for 1 second, and with ease we'll give it a height of 22 pixels and a maximum width of 372 pixels. Finally, we give it a width of 0% to begin with, and that's all for the CSS part of it. And finally completing it, you should have something which looks like this. Stay tuned for the third and the last part, which is JavaScript part, as the JavaScript part is going to be the most exciting of this entire series, as you are going to make the game come to life by adding different things like game logic and all. So be sure to be tuned for the third part. This is Codemeister signing off.